Good afternoon, welcome to UK Column News. It's the 5th of March 2014 and myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth, United Kingdom. Hello.
Well, hello to everybody. The weather here in Plymouth at least is pretty chilly this morning, about 3 degrees. It's overcast. It's dry at the moment, which has shocked a lot of people, including the dog walkers. So probably the same over the rest of the country. Dry weather, very unusual.
Sunshine was nice though to see this morning.
It was. Well, I think Mike's going to kick off with a report on obviously the very serious situation in Ukraine.
Yes, so on this morning's Today programme, John Humphreys introduced another BBC hit piece on Vladimir Putin with the words, "We see Vladimir Putin from this distance as a vain man, a macho egomaniac, corrupt perhaps, certainly power-hungry." So the first question that sprung to mind was, who is we? It's certainly not the British people, because the view of the British people the view that the British people has of Putin is coming from the BBC and the other mainstream media. So he must mean we, as in he and his colleagues. But hold on a second, because perhaps that description applies to some others as well. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I personally think this is part of the most pathetic propaganda I've seen by the Conservative Party and obviously all of the David Cameron sycophants, because what is he doing? He's running along a stream, but the image is designed to make him look as though he's on the Royal Marines commando course. Well, it's pathetic propaganda.
Indeed, and of course that is an historical article from the Mail, but they have it the nail hit on the head there. He's attempting to look like Vladimir Putin. Well, look, yesterday Pete Santilli made the point that it's very hard to get an understanding of Putin, of the type of man that he is, but I think probably the best way that we can do that is to look at his words and listen to his words and more importantly look at his actions. I think there's no doubt that Putin has an ego, but is he power hungry? Or is he trying to do the best job that he can for a country that he believes in? And is he corrupt, or is it he's been fighting the type of corruption that the West likes to promote? Yesterday afternoon he met journalists to discuss the Ukrainian crisis, and I just want to go through the main points that he made. He said, first of all, my assessment of what happened in Kiev and in the Ukraine in general, there can only be one assessment. That is an anti-constitutional takeover, an armed seizure of power. Does anyone question this? Nobody does. There is a question here that neither I nor my colleagues with whom I've been discussing the situation in Ukraine a great deal over the past days, as you know, none of us can answer. And the question is, why was this done? I like to draw your attention to the fact that President Yanukovych, through the mediation of foreign ministers of 3 European countries, Poland, Germany and France, and in the presence of my representative, signed an agreement with the opposition on the 21st of February. I would like to stress that under that agreement, Mr. Yanukovych actually handed over power. He agreed to all the opposition's demands. He agreed to early parliamentary elections, to early presidential elections, and to return to the 2004 constitution, as demanded by the opposition. He gave a positive response to our request, the request of Western countries, and first of all of the opposition, not to use force. He did not issue a single illegal order to shoot at demonstrators. Moreover, he issued orders to withdraw all police forces from the capital, and they complied. He went to Kharkov to attend an event, and as soon as he left, instead of releasing the occupied administrative buildings, they immediately occupied the president's residence and the government building, and all that instead of acting on the agreement. So I asked myself, what was the purpose of all this? I want to understand why this was done. He had in fact given up his power already, and as I believe, as I told him, he had no chance of being re-elected. Everybody agrees on this. Everyone I've been speaking to on the telephone in the past few days. What was the purpose of all those illegal, unconstitutional actions? Why did they have to create this chaos in the country? Armed and masked militants are still roaming the streets of Kiev. This is a question to which there is no answer. Did they wish to humiliate someone and show their power? I think these actions are absolutely foolish. The result is the absolute opposite of what they expected, because their actions have significantly destabilized the east and southwest of Ukraine. In my opinion, this revolutionary situation has been brewing for a long time, since the first days of Ukraine's independence. The ordinary Ukrainian citizen, the ordinary guy, suffered during the rule of Nicholas II, during the reign of Kuchma and Yushchenko and Yanukovych. Nothing or almost nothing has changed for the better. Corruption has reached dimensions that are unheard of here in Russia. Accumulation of wealth and social stratification, problems that are also acute in this country, are much worse in the Ukraine, radically worse. Out there, they're beyond anything we can imagine. Generally, people want to change, but one should not support illegal change. I understand those people on the Maidan, though I do not support this kind of turnover. I understand the people on the Maidan who are calling for radical change rather than some cosmetic remodelling of power. Why are they demanding this? Because they've grown used to seeing one set of thieves being replaced by another. So I think that's where Putin is coming from, and at least publicly. And the other allegation that was made on the BBC, of course, was that Putin is corrupt. But let's remember his long-standing war with corruption in Russia, who's right behind this new so-called government we have in Ukraine? Well, this Western-backed government, and we've got exactly the kind of corruption that Putin has been trying to root out of his own country. Basically, this new government is being run by the oligarchs, and certainly any of the people that are involved in that government that were part of the Orange Revolution, certainly oligarch controlled. And let's not forget Britain's open door policy to that same corruption, with the likes of Peter Mandelson enjoying parties on Russian oligarchs' yachts and so on, and large quantities of London now owned by Russian oligarchs. And in the meantime, the West continues to directly provoke. RT here reporting that following Britain's pulling out of the upcoming G8 preparatory talks, the US is now following suit. We've got the US Department of Trade saying we have suspended upcoming bilateral trade and investment engagement with the government of Russia that were part of a move towards deeper commercial and trade ties. And earlier, actually Monday evening, Rear Admiral John Kirby announced that US and Russia military engagements, military exercises and port visits, these kind of things are not going to happen anymore for the foreseeable future. And he said, although the Department of Defense finds value in the military-to-military relationship with the Russian Federation, we have developed over the past few years to increase transparency, build understanding and reduce the risk of military miscalculation. We have, in light of recent events in Ukraine, put on hold all military-to-military engagements between the United States and Russia. This includes exercises, bilateral meetings, port visits and planning conferences. And of course that is a move which Russia sees as absolute nuts. And here we've got the Russian State Duma Defense Committee First Deputy Chairman Viktor Zavarin, and he said, I would like to give a piece of advice to the West. One should get rid of bloc ambitions, rudiments of the Cold War, a unipolar approach to solving international problems, political short-sightedness and double standards. The US decision to put military cooperation with Russia on hold does not add to a constructive dialogue and once again worsens the situation. Russia is ready to interact with every party concerned, given that such cooperation is fair and based on the ability not only to reach agreements but also to fulfill them, keeping in mind the interests of the whole Ukrainian people and Ukraine's partners. So when I listen to the language of the politicians on both sides, I'm hearing a clear message. I believe Russia is looking to engage on this issue. The UK, the US, NATO are looking to provoke. There seems to be, at least on the Western side, a determination for war, and if that happens, I'm pretty sure I know who's going to be responsible for it, and it won't be the corrupt, power-hungry, macho egomaniac in Russia.
It's pretty remarkable stuff, Mike, and I've got to say, as someone who served in the military during the prime Cold War period, that it's just amazing to look at what is being pumped out, particularly by the BBC, but of course other Western media, pure propaganda and certainly very little of the truth about what's happening in Ukraine. We've got yet again David Cameron and Obama and William Hague all pushing, Kerry as well, all pushing for an escalation, threats against Russia. Very, very dangerous situation. And it's quite clear, I think, that Putin is well aware that it's been Western agents that have been helping to destabilise the Ukraine. And we will certainly have more to say on that subject next week. But there we are. Where does the truth lie? Well, certainly not in the propaganda being put across in Britain at the moment. And unless we get back to what the real truth is, we're not going to deal with the country, what's happening overseas. And the other thing I'm just going to add is that, of course, we're dealing with Russia, a country with a pretty troubled and dark history and under the hand of Stalin. But as we're going to see as we move on through the news today, that Stalinist style seems to be coming to the fore in UK very, very quickly indeed. And we will say that people need to wake up to what started to happen in UK because if we don't, we're going to be in for some very, very dark and troublesome times. Leads on very nicely to your favourite man.
Dark and troublesome person, yeah.
Mr. Blair.
Apologies for this story. It's only a brief one. The Mail are reporting that our #1 war criminal is considering making a large donation to Labour. Mr. Blair is apparently in discussion with senior Labour figures about making a large donation from his £70 million fortune to support everything Mr. Miliband is doing.
So we got Tony Blair that many people think have lied, told porcupines if you prefer, which takes the country into war. Millions of people die as a result. He then slips out of government and starts working for anybody who's going to pay him money, tied in, of course, with the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. So he's helping to save the world. He's looking after our spiritual needs, pumping in a few million, presumably 70 million he's worth.
£70 million fortune, yeah.
70 million to date and climbing. And now what's he going to do? He's going to be in the background funding Ed Miliband, who we should remember not only spawn of a Marxist family, but of course the man who was happy to have those late night meetings under the so-called Chatham House rules in order to gain control of the press and media.
And standing alongside Harriet Harman and supporting her with her involvement with Pi, which we'll be coming on to a little bit more.
Indeed. Well, this one follows on really from yesterday where we were talking about Ed's brother Dave, and of course he'd left his failed attempt to lead the Labour Party, hopped over to New York to join the International Rescue Committee, and we thought we'd bring up this photograph today. Well, who's he with? Well, he's the main man, of course, on £300,000 for 37. Actually, it's 37 and a half hours a week. Sorry about that, David. Extra half hour. It's probably worth £5,000. And here he is with obscenely rich investors. And of course, the gentleman there on his left is multi-billionaire George Soros, master of the international change agenda through Open Society. And of course, what this man specialises in is getting Alinsky-style community activists into societies in order to destabilise and bring the sort of change that he wants. And we've got a Soros Jr. on the other side of Mr. Miliband. And this was just a note. Apologies, I should have put the source of this. But basically it says Jonathan Soros is co-founder of the Friends of Democracy, Super PAC, which aims to reduce the influence of money in politics. I'll read that again. It aims to reduce the influence of money in politics by supporting candidates who endorse campaign finance reform. Soros is also a senior fellow at the Roosevelt Institute, where he examines the implications of corporate personhood in post-Citizens United America and explores social investment among for-profit entities. So if you read between that language, what he's doing is the opposite of what he says he's doing, because he's bringing big money into politics. And why do you want to do that? To make sure, of course, that the politicians do exactly as they're told. And if we can just reinforce that point, this is an old article from The Guardian going back to 2011, and the headline says it all. George Soros tells David Cameron, change direction or face recession. Mike?
What is Post-Citizens United America?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's referring really to when America is fully regionalised. And we've got the full North American Union, so instead of South America, Canada and the US, we've simply got one regional bloc. And of course, the agenda is to make sure that there is no residing national government in America. It's broken down. That's what I think he's talking about, but maybe some of our viewers and listeners can tell us. We'll just end on this particular subject with this one from the Times of Israel, which is paying very, very close attention to the three men at the top of Britain's politics, and it's quite clear that they are strongly backing Mr. Miliband. So in this particular article, they're defending him against the terrible attacks from the Daily Mail. Of course, the Mail was accusing him of actually being a Marxist. But we're going to say, well, there's all this interest from Israel in what these men are doing. David Cameron has pledged his undying loyalty to Israel. Ed Miliband has done the same. Clegg there in the background wants watching very, very closely. One of Leon Britton's boys, of course, trained in all matters to do with the European Union. Many people would say he's the driving force behind David Cameron. Is his loyalty in Europe, or is it Britain, or is it Spain with his wife, or is it Russia, or indeed is it Holland? There's so many nationalities in Mr. Clegg. He must find it difficult to know what language to speak in when he gets up.
Ed Miliband also came out and said he was a Zionist as well, didn't he? In the conference as well. So yeah. Marxist, Zionist.
And Britain presumably comes about fourth down the pile of his priorities. Yeah. But anyway, if he loses the leadership of the Labour Party, he can always pop across and get a job off his brother David.
Yeah, we'll borrow some money off of Blair.
Or Mr. Soros.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'd like to thank Richard North for this one. It's come from the EU referendum site. And this is a very, very detailed article exposing just how much money the BBC has taken and is currently taken from the European Union in order to progress its activities. I thoroughly recommend that people go and read this article themselves, and it will tie in very nicely with further information we the UK Column News will be bringing to the table about the BBC's activities, and in particular BBC Media Action, which of course is spreading BBC propaganda through vulnerable countries around the world. So please visit this site. If you think the BBC is working for the licence payer, I think this is probably the final nail in the coffin.
Definitely.
And our judges up to...
I'd like Mike's comments on this story, actually. Lord Chief Justice Lord Thomas has called for reform on fraud to ensure corrupt bankers should stand accountable. Lord Thomas is the top man at the judiciary and top criminal judge in England and Wales, and he said that there were too few prosecutors for fraud, especially in the financial markets and for bribery and corruption. Now, let's just remind ourselves of the billions of pounds banks such as Northern Rock, RBS and HBOS have cost us, the taxpayer, and the fact that no one has stood accountable as of yet. So hopefully this gentleman would like to see some changes to make these bankers stand accountable for these
Can we ask,
Mike?
Well, I was going to say, can we ask a question here?
Yeah.
Do we really need changes in order to prosecute bankers? What's so special about what's...
well, this is true. Why can't they just be prosecuted? Why do we need to have changes against it? I don't know. Mike?
What I find interesting is that Action Fraud has moved in within the remit of the City of London Police. The primary fraud investigating unit for the entire United Kingdom is now within the auspices of City of London Police. So I fear that Justice John Thomas is in fact on a hiding to nothing with this one, because while the City of London Police are in charge, I don't think we're going to see any major investigations or proper investigations or charges brought against fraudulent banking activity.
Because the City of London Police are actually private, aren't they? Is that correct?
Well, it
would
appear to be the case, yeah.
I think we might see whether we can get hold of Ian Puddick at some stage to make some comment on his experience of fraud and corruption inside the city and the effect of that on the City of London Police.
Yeah.
So very interesting that we're now starting to see increasing agitation in UK, we'll say England and Wales, by judges for reform of the law.
Yeah.
Have they got our best interests at heart? Well, we don't think so.
No, especially after this next story. It actually repulsed me reading it. A 15-year-old who had been abused and was made pregnant at 14 by a man more than double her age was actually sent to prison by Judge Robert Bartfield. I don't know if we've got a picture of him.
I'm afraid we haven't. They all look the same, though. They've all got sort of white,
red,
crinkly hair
exactly,
and
wearing
red dresses.
Well, Judge Robert Bartfield, she was in prison by Robert Bartfield for not wanting to give evidence, as she had strong feelings for the man that had groomed her. The girl was actually kept for 22 hours at a West Yorkshire police station, then held in cells at Bradford Crown Court for another 4.5 hours before giving her evidence, and apparently it took under 2 hours for her abuser to be found guilty. But there's been no mention, as well, and maybe he hasn't been sentenced as yet, but no report on what sentence he has received. But the judge made this following statement, and he said that the trial would have collapsed without the girl's evidence, and that the police and CPS felt there was no alternative but to apply for an arrest warrant for her after she went missing. He added that he regretted the girl's detention but said the interests of justice had to be served.
Yeah, do we trust these people? No. And do we trust our politicians? Well, I think the answer to that is becoming very clear, and it's a no as well.
It's a definite no. OK, I actually ended up phoning the Daily Mail this morning, and I'm waiting for a response back. So yesterday we covered the story of Cameron's advisor and best friend resigning before being arrested over images of children, indecent images of children. Well, today the Mail are asking, why did Number 10 cover up the story? Mr Rock resigned on February the 12th, with only Cameron and Theresa May knowing of Rock's resignation. And Cameron has been asked why it's taken so long for him to come clean about Mr Rock. And Mr Cameron's response is, first of all, I have to be careful what I say about this issue because there are criminal investigations under the way. Obviously, when I heard these allegations, I was profoundly shocked, and I remain profoundly shocked. In terms of the release of this information, I do not think it would be right to preemptively speak about a criminal investigation, and that is why we did not do it. As questions were asked, and as questions will be inevitable be asked, we have given very full and straightforward answers, which is absolutely the right way to handle this situation. I've been clear right along when I was first told about this issue, pretty much as soon as it was discovered, that we must handle this in absolutely the correct way. I am satisfied that this is what Number 10 has done, and he did play an important role at Downing Street. No mention that he was one of his closest friends. Well, it gets more interesting, Brian.
I'll just bring... yes,
yep.
Go on.
OK,
let
me just get this out, because further down in the article it reads that a senior Labour source has come out and said that the questions should be asked if Number 10 sat on the information about Mr Rock to exploit what was happening with Harriet Harman and Pi. Well, some news for you, Daily Mail, and I have forwarded it on to you. The fact that Mr Cameron and Mrs Harman are actually cousins. And if you don't believe me, you just need to go back to July of 2007 when the Daily Mail's Richard Kay reported that Mr Cameron and Mrs Harman were, in fact, cousins.
It's keep it all in the family.
It is keep it all in the family. I picked
up on just a couple of images here from the Mail. So this is, isn't it? This is how we're presented politics. We've got the dedicated police officer there defending Number 10 doorway, and then we've got our very respectable David Cameron leading a lady from Germany. Merkel, I believe.
It looks like Merkel, I was going to say,
presumably
yeah.
he's found her somewhere respectable. So this is what we're led to believe. But if we get into it, it's I think we credit where it's due for Tom Watson Centre here, that this man was brave enough to stand up in Parliament and start to ask about the links between paedophile rings and past members of Parliament and indeed serving members. And it's just extraordinary that we're now starting to see these connections coming up.
Questions need to be asked. She is involved in the paedophile information exchange.
No, links to the
NCCL. Okay,
yes, NCCL.
Which links to Pi. She's David Cameron's cousin. David Cameron's friend and close advisor has just been picked up for indecent images of children and furthers. And we shouldn't worry, and we shouldn't be nervous about the people who are in.
These people are in Westminster. They've been elected by us. Let's bring it home to roost. And these people are to be trusted, and we can see by the state of the country that they're doing a good job. And we're just going to talk a bit about whether our children are safe. Mike?
Can I just comment on that comment you've just made? They were elected by us. There'll be many, many people saying they weren't elected by me. No. Well, in fact, if you didn't vote, they were elected by you because your non-vote is considered to be consent. So there you go. Think about that one.
Yeah. Do we have the article where it does claim that the two of them are cousins? Have we got that article?
I'm afraid I haven't. But
we'll bring it up maybe tomorrow's show. And if everyone listens, look, Richard Kay, I think it's back in July 2007 for that article.
Okay, well, what we're going to have a look at here is what is really going on in UK at the moment. We're going to deal in the subject of paedophilia and what happens to people when they report it. Now, we watch with great interest at the moment as on many of the, I'm going to call them the free media websites and blogs and discussion groups, there are still many people that seem to regard this subject as something of a joke. They think that they can post messages attacking people who've been trying to expose what has really been going on around paedophile child abuse in Britain. And as we're seeing from the mainstream press, it is now becoming more and more clear that the paedophile rings are linked to the highest levels of the political establishment. And of course, what we are seeing is those paedophile rings operating through the very public services that we think are there to protect our children. Now, there's been a number of things happened over the last few weeks where the UK column has become particularly aware of just how dangerous the situation is in UK. So we've picked some of the cases that we know about at the moment, and we're going to try and produce those in the clearest possible way to give viewers and listeners an overview of this very, very dangerous situation in UK. So the British state is protecting paedophiles. There's no doubt about this. And let us start up in Scotland with Robert Green. So Robert campaigns for justice for the child abuse victim Holly Greig. And what is the result? Well, the first thing that happens 11 days after she makes a complaint that her daughter was sexually abused, but Anne Greig is sectioned. Later, after he's campaigned, Robert is subjected Robert is subjected to an attempted sectioning, but he's imprisoned twice, and he goes through a secret court with no proper representation, no jury, no press, and no public. So let's remember, has this man committed a crime against children? No, he simply stood up to say that Holly Greig has not been fully investigated, and he's pointing to documentary evidence which shows either gross incompetence by the Scottish government and establishment or a blatant cover-up. But there are the key issues: people standing up to protect children, sectioned and imprisoned. So let's carry on around the country. This is an appalling case that came to our attention a couple of months ago in Cleveland. A mother and a daughter reported possible paedophile activity and connections between their local church gay pornography involving very young men. They did all the right things. They went to the police. They made very measured reports. And what was the result? That they were subjected to vicious harassment by police. They were accused of being mentally ill. And eventually, 2 weeks ago, I think now, police smashed their way into their home and used CS gas in particular to attack the mother. And we'll show you some pictures of that in a moment. The mother and daughter were held for, I think, about 12, 14 hours. They were then released, but the daughter was able to force the police to drive her mother to a hospital so that CS gas damage to her eyes and face could be dealt with. Well, here we are in Oxford. This was about a year ago now. A young mother asked social services for help to protect her daughter from very sadistic abuse. And the result was that she was harassed by the local authority and social services. And then eventually the child was taken, given to the abusive people, and the mother herself was sectioned. This one we're going to give you more detail on in a minute, but a young mother in Cornwall discovered paedophilic photos and activities around a local school. What was the result? She suffered unbelievable harassment by police and social services, and she has been recently sectioned and we now believe forcibly medicated, and court action is already underway to take her children. This is Devon. A mother reported that her young teenage daughter had been encouraged to stay overnight with teachers. She went what she thought was for a she went to the school, she thought, for a meeting with the head teacher and staff to discuss what had happened. When she arrived at the school, she was met by not only the school staff, but local authority staff and social services and a local mental health team. The result was she was sectioned. When she continued to fight her case, she was sectioned again and held for 5 months in a psychiatric unit in Plymouth. And finally, from Sheffield, a lady discovered a paedophile ring operating around a local school. She reported what she'd found quite correctly to the police and the authorities, and the result was she suffered such extreme harassment and psychological abuse that she eventually suffered a major stroke. And even when she was in hospital with that stroke, the local authority kept very tight control over her, so that there was no possibility she could continue to report to free media what she actually knew about the paedophile ring. So I'm going to say to viewers and listeners, if you think any of the reporting, certainly that the UK column has done over recent years on this subject, is not fully researched, I can assure you that we do our research very carefully. And what we are now seeing is a template of those men and women who correctly report concerns about paedophile and child abuse around the country are instantly being subjected to major harassment by the state, and as you've seen, with multiple cases of sectioning and forcible drugging in order to shut them up. Now remember, we are not talking about Stalinist Russia here. We're talking about David Cameron, Clegg and Miliband's Britain in 2014. But these are exactly the same tactics that were used to create the closed Stalinist system, closed courts, mental institutions to keep people quiet, and of course children and citizens were simply resources to be used by the state. Now this is just a still from a short video of the young mother in Cornwall actually being sectioned, and I think we can show you a very short part of the film that friends took when they were trying to protect her by social services and mental health team in Cornwall.
They know nothing about what's going on now. So how could they don't know my personal experiences.
But these people that are professionally trained, okay, have assessed they've come in and they've spoken to you and they've assessed you and they've done all that they need to do and have made the decision.
Pen and paper. If I get written down what I can today, will you, one of you please come and collect that pad off me and get that to the other, you know, just in case, because they're going to try give me medication.
Well, we know
I'm not
that.
taking medication.
She just said
I will not
they're
take
going to force medication down her.
Didn't that
Yeah,
say
no, I
she
will
was
not.
going to
No, I
force
will not
medication?
take
Well, you will
medication.
force
I'm
medication
against
because
it.
that's how they work.
In my
That-
beliefs,
that's-
I'm against
that's-
medication. I'm very much.
Do you want to answer that?
That's
Do you want to answer what
Sorry, what was that?
Adrian said?
We can't force medication unless somebody's on a 3, and then there has to be a second opinion
On a what?
doctor. On a 3. Emma's not going in on a 3, she's going in on a 2.
Sorry, so what are the concerns? Because you've got, I'm not a
Look.
finger to
No,
myself
it's
or
happened.
others.
We're
It's
not
happened.
agreeing with this anymore, so you've got to come with us,
No,
okay?
just-
We want you to walk out of here,
You just give
okay?
me 10 minutes to get my things together. This
What
is
do you
not
want?
fair.
What things do you
Am I
want?
coming back later?
Not at the well, you're going to be assessed, I take it. The assessment will happen here at hospital.
Yeah, and then I'll be
And then
back
the
out later
decision
then.
will be
Not
made.
Not-
today, no.
The decision
28 days it could be.
No, this isn't fair. I'm not.
It may not be fair.
Why are you
Emma, but
stitching me
it's-
up like
It's
this?
not a stitch
No,
up.
it is a stitch up.
You've got to understand that people are doing it because they're concerned.
Concerned for what? I've said I've done nothing wrong.
No one said you've done anything wrong. They just feel that you've obviously got issues with your
Issues?
mental health.
No.
Alright? That's why we're all here.
Why don't
We
you
wouldn't
look
be
and see?
here
No.
If
Why
there
don't you
weren't
look and
any
see what the
concerns.
police and everything done? Why don't you? Why is there nothing on my records?
I can't answer that, can I, right here and now?
No,
All I
it's
can
been
say,
going on for a year.
all I
I've
can
been at.
say
This
to you,
isn't
Emma,
right. No.
is that it's come to a head today. You've been detained under the Mental Health
Okay, can I
Act.
ask you one question?
Now, those of you who are regular viewers with UK Column may well remember some similarities with that video and the taking of a very young baby from a day-old baby from a mother and father that we broadcast some time ago. This clip that we've just shown was taken by supporters of the young mother. She was eventually bundled out of her home, put in a police car and taken to a psychiatric unit. Now, we've been monitoring the situation, but early this morning we received this message, which we're going to play exactly as we received it, which is essentially this young mother pleading for help and saying that she believes that she's about to be medicated.
You're right, Brian, it's Emma. I've just spoke to someone and they're trying to say that all the professionals think I need medication, so I think they're going to try and get me to take it. It's my will. Is there any way that I can have any solutions to help this is unfair?
Right, if we can just bring that slide up, Mike, that's there waiting. Well, we couldn't put this more clearly, or for a person to be saying themselves, we've experienced these sorts of telephone calls before. We have a very long recording of the mother waiting to be taken away in an ambulance for sectioning in the Oxford case. It's very, very harrowing. This is happening across UK on a weekly basis. None of the cases that we've put on screen today, the mothers don't know each other, they've never met each other, so this is not something that's orchestrated. And what we are continually saying to supporters of UK Column is that sometimes we're not answering calls because of the volume of calls we get for people that are absolutely desperate for help. So if you want to see what the British state is really capable of, I'll just bring up this picture of the mother in Cleveland. And this is the result of essentially CS gas burns after at least 6 Cleveland police officers smashed their way through the front door and the rear door of this lady's home to arrest her and her daughter because they had dared go to the police with evidence taken from the internet of particularly unpleasant homosexual pornography, which also included images of young men that these ladies believed were underage. So we can see the burns, the CS burns on her face. The daughter had to force Cleveland police to take the mother to hospital for treatment because she was having major problems with her eyes. And these are some other photographs of CS gas burns. This is on the lady's upper chest. And of course, the police themselves acted like thugs. And here we've got just one of the, sorry, this should be, this is a bruise rather than a burn. I'm sorry for that, but this is just showing you the extent of the violence used against these mothers. And here she is, Cleveland Chief Police Constable Jackie Cheer. This is the lady who had put on so much weight she was unable to complete the fitness course that she required her own officers to complete. But now we can actually see what these women are doing. And if we just bring up this gentleman who we mentioned a couple of days ago, here is a very, very dangerous British politician who is now openly saying that if you dare to express a view which the government calls extremist, then you are actually going to have your children taken away from you. So so we're led to believe it's up to people like Boris Johnson who are going to decide whether children are taken away from you, and we've just demonstrated the manner in which the state will do that. And I'll just, sorry, just before we move on to that, Lou, I'll just put this up again because remember that we're not dealing necessarily with any form of extremism at all, but here we've got a local council making up the law in order to take foster children away from a couple because they simply dared to support the UK Independence Party.
I mean, what message is this giving to people? They now, if this is happening, all they're trying to do is protect the children and other people's children. They're getting harassed, they're getting sectioned. What's happening to their kids, these mums? What's happening to the kids?
Well, we believe the children are effectively put into, they're trafficked into abuse.
No, but say for Emma, who we've just seen, what's happened to her children after she gets sectioned? Have social services come in, or have they been allowed to go with family?
They're with family at the moment, but we understood from the phone, from an earlier phone call, that basically social services in Cornwall have already started court action to get control of those children. So what can people do? What can be done, Brian? This is such a serious issue. The paedophilia is just getting out of control. People are reporting at having their own children taken who then could possibly get into the system and end up being prey for these. What can be done? The simple answer is people have got to be aware about it. They've got to start talking about it in real terms. They've got to talk about false imprisonment. They've got to talk about abuse within the so-called childcare system. And people have got to be hammering on the doors of every public representative going. That includes the police, it includes their local MP and councillors. But I'm also going to say that in the nicest possible way, we've got to tackle and stamp on the people who are now beginning to make a joke of these sort of issues over the internet.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe shock a few people, but it's becoming more and more evident that in some of the free media blogs, we're seeing people treat this issue of child abuse as if it was some sort of game. They are criticising people who are standing up to warn the country what's happening, and they're making a joke. They're not pointing fingers at the politicians, but as we've seen, we've got Clegg who's calling for children to be taught about pornography in schools, and we've got Cameron and Brown, Blair, the rest of them, who are have clearly facilitated this system. Mike?
Yeah, to answer Lou's question, I mean, I think the main thing everybody should be doing is talking about this. We've got to get this information spread as widely as possible. Anybody that's sitting in their bedrooms or in their living rooms on their computers, that's not necessarily enough. We've got to get out and talk to people face to face, because that's the way you get to have a conversation with somebody in a realistic way, a two-way dialogue, rather than sort of emails or forum posts that you then have to wait for a period of time, and that kind of disjointed conversation doesn't really go anywhere. And we also have a tendency, all of us have a tendency to fall into the trap of talking among ourselves. We've got to get this information out to a much broader audience,
including the mainstream press and media, because
absolutely,
as we're seeing, there is movement within.
Yeah, but Brian, I just wanted to just touch on this because we were talking about it earlier. Because what I see building with this paedophilia story breaking in the mainstream press is a almost MP expenses style operation going on, where we know that we've been talking about this problem existing within mainstream politics at the highest level for quite a long time, but suddenly the mainstream media is talking about it, and they seem to be building up to something here, and I think it's very important that we don't. We don't allow this situation to be used as an excuse for bringing in some other legislation or some other agenda, because all the legislation is already in place to deal with this problem. The people that are guilty of these types of criminal acts should be in prison, whether they're heads of state, whether they're MPs, whatever they are, whether they're judges, they should be in prison. And we do not need this subject to be used as an excuse to bring in the next level of draconian control.
Yeah. It's being aware and astute as to what's going on, but the first thing we have got to do is get it fully exposed as to what's going on. We've got a country being run by criminals, and there are certainly paedophiles amongst them, and we've got to start talking about it.
Definitely.
Well, we'll move on to health, or maybe not health.
Oh, blimey.
Stay with it.
Okay, new guidelines are being recommended giving statins to 8 to 10 men aged 50 and over, and half of all women over 60. And what a surprise, these recommendations are coming from NICE, who we went into in detail about a month or so ago. Here's one of the articles that we covered back, it was about a month ago. And this was a gentleman, an advisor for NICE, Professor Colin Baint. And he had the suggestion, well, it looks like these recommendations are going to be forced coming into play. And GPs are actually claiming that there is insufficient evidence that statins are of any benefit, and are concerned at the side effects that these drugs cause. And in a survey, 6 in 10 GPs opposed the draft proposal to give more patients statins. And if you want more links to NICE and the dangers of statin, go back to the 13th of February UK column, and we have all the details. Here it is, NICE, and all the details of this organisation are on the show from 13th of February.
Right, and of course the next one tells us the truth. The truth.
What doctors don't tell you. I highly recommend this site. It's fantastic. And here they're saying the UK government are paying out £60 million in damages for swine flu vaccines, and they're going to pay out about £1 million to each of the 60 parents whose children were permanently damaged by the swine flu vaccine. Most of the children ended up suffering from narcolepsy or sleeping sickness. The 60 million payout is expected to be only the first of several, as more parents are coming forward. And it's reckoned that the vaccine pandemics cause narcolepsy and catalepsy, or muscle weakness, in 1 out of 16,000 children vaccinated, and around 800 children across Europe have so far been diagnosed with one of the adverse reactions after the vaccination. But as more than 60 million children were given Pandemrix, the number of cases could rise to 3,750. So good
we're
news.
being poisoned,
we're being
basically.
Poisoned. Our children are being poisoned.
Yeah, under the guidance of the same criminals and paedophiles that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Is it a surprise? Mike, you have the solution, or the start of it anyway.
I'd like to bring it up as well in a minute. Off you go, Mike.
Can you go ahead, Lou?
Okay, so we have set up a Bradbury Pound Facebook page, and I have been speaking to Justin and John, and they have done a fantastic little article and newsletter for the call to action on Budget Day up in London on March the 19th. So if people want to go onto Facebook, have a look for Bradbury Pound. There is a article on there, this article on there, where they are explaining what's going to be done on Budget Day. It's not a protest, it's just a peaceful gathering. Education where supporters of Bradbury, that there's going to be balloons and leaflets, can go and they can talk to hopefully the mainstream media, speak to the politicians as they're going in, hand them some leaflets on the Bradbury and the solutions. And on this newsletter there are meet-up points, and the meet-up is at 11:30 a.m. College Green, which is next to the Palace of Westminster, and all the information is up on that Facebook page. We will be getting up it in the column very shortly, but I will keep reminding everybody about Budget Day, 19th of March. If you can get to London, we will be there, and we just want a quiet, educated meeting and just hand out some leaflets to show support for the Bradbury and educate people. If
you're still not sure what the Bradbury is about, then get onto the UK Column website, have a look at the e-book which details it, but it's simply issuing the nation's money as credit instead of debt to these banksters, I think they're known as.
Yeah, just to remind people as well, we have the leaflets with the Bradbury pound and info on the UK column. If anybody wants a batch, you can get in touch with Carol, and obviously the bumper stickers and the T-shirts as well, and you can check all that out on the UK column website.
OK, and we're going to end with a reminder, of course, that this very brave man, Robert Green, is still in Perth prison on remand. Robert has told us over the last 24 hours that he still has no full and proper communication with his legal representatives. It would appear that communications are mysteriously going astray or being suppressed in some manner. But Robert has also said that there has been huge support for him inside the prison and indeed with prison staff. And of course, many people inside the prison over the last few days have been talking about the information emerging around Alex Salmond and the fact that Aberdeen itself is talking about banning him from parks and offices because they're alleging he has an extremely bullying demeanour, which they've had enough of. So consider England transformed into the same situation that we have in Scotland, which would be 3 people controlling the whole of the judiciary and all of the police forces across UK. And you put in charge of the 3 individuals at the top of the pyramid a man who is showing signs of being an out-and-out bully. Very, very dangerous. And of course, also remember that north of the border now, children are being given a named state person to look after them throughout their childhood days. So children, property of the state in Scotland, just about part of the family and parents here in UK, in England, but it only if we stand up for this. So if you picked up on what we've actually shown today about not only the abuse of children, but the abuse of those who try to protect children by the state itself, I hope that you will distribute this information as widely as possible and indeed get it overseas so we can be talking with our American friends and indeed other countries in Europe that are only too well aware that the British government is stealing and trafficking and abusing children. We'll leave you on that happy note. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.